Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Coming up in the next hour. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol faces impeachment calls after the martial law debacle. French Prime Minister Michel Barnier backs Emmanuel Macron's leadership ahead of the no-confidence vote today. ISRO to launch Europe's Probe 3 satellite from Sriharikota today for solar research. And in the Men's Junior Asia Cup hockey, India beat Malaysia 3-1 to set up the title clash with Pakistan. Okay, up first, let's head live to the upper house of Indian Parliament, where External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is making a statement.
Akali as a result of the 1962 conflict and the events that preceded it. Furthermore, Pakistan illegally ceded 5,180 square kilometers of Indian territory to China, which has been under its occupation since 1948. India and China have held talks for multiple decades to resolve the boundary issue. While there is a line of actual control, LAC, it does not have a common understanding in some areas. We remain committed to engaging with China through bilateral discussions to arrive at a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable framework for boundary settlement. Honorable members would recall that the amassing of a large number of troops by China along the line of actual control, LAC, in eastern Ladakh in April-May 2020 resulted in face-offs with our forces at a number of points. The situation also led to a disruption of patrolling activities. It is to the credit of our armed forces that despite logistical challenges and the then prevailing COVID situation, they were able to counter-deploy rapidly and effectively. The House, sir, is well aware of the circumstances leading to the violent clashes in Galwan Valley in June 2020. In the months thereafter, we were addressing a situation that had seen not only fatalities for the first time in 45 years, but also a turn of events serious enough for heavy weaponry to be deployed in close proximity to the LAC. While a determined counter-deployment of adequate capability was the government's immediate response, there was also the imperative of a diplomatic effort to diffuse these heightened tensions and to restore peace and tranquility. Sir, the contemporary phase of our ties with China dates back to 1988, when there was a clear understanding that the Sino-Indian boundary question will be settled through peaceful and friendly consultations. In 1991, the two sides agreed to maintain peace and tranquility in the areas along the LAC, pending a final settlement of the boundary question. Thereafter, in 1993, an agreement was reached on the maintenance of peace and tranquility along the LAC. Subsequently, in 1996, India and China agreed on confidence-building measures in the military field. In 2003, we finalized a declaration on the principles of our relations and comprehensive cooperation, which included the appointment of special representatives. In 2005, a protocol was formulated on the modalities for implementations of CBMs in the military field along the LAC. At the same time, the political parameters and guiding principles for the settlement of boundary question was also agreed upon. In 2012, a working mechanism for consultation and coordination called WMCC was established. A year later, we reached an understanding on border defense cooperation as well. Honorable Chairman, sir, the purpose of my recalling these agreements is to underline the elaborate nature of our shared efforts to ensure peace and tranquility in the border areas, and to emphasize the seriousness of what its unprecedented disruption in 2020 implied for our overall relationship. The situation arising after our counter-deployment called for a multiple set of responses. The immediate priority was to ensure disengagement from friction points so that there would be no further untoward incidents or clashes. This has been fully achieved, as I will explain. The next priority will be to consider de-escalation that would address the massing of troops along the LAC with associated accompaniments. It is also evident that the management of border areas will require further attention in the light of our recent experiences. In all of this, we were and we remain very clear that the three key principles must be observed under all circumstances. One, both sides should strictly respect and observe the LAC. Two, neither side should attempt to unilaterally alter the status quo. And three, agreements and understandings reached in the past must be fully abided by in their entirety. Sir, honorable members would also appreciate that as a result of the sustained tension and specific developments in the border areas, our overall relationship with China was bound to be impacted adversely. In the new circumstances, it was obviously not possible to continue the normal exchanges, interactions, and activities as in the past. In this regard, we made clear that the development of our ties were contingent on the principles of mutual sensitivity, mutual respect, and mutual interest. So, throughout this period, honorable members would also be aware that the government has publicly maintained that India-China relations cannot be normal in the absence of peace and tranquility in the border areas. The combination of a firm and principled stand on the situation, as well as a clearly articulated approach to the totality of our ties, has been the foundation of our engagement with China for the last 4 years. We have been very clear that the restoration of peace and tranquility in the border areas would be the basis for the rest of the relationship moving forward. Since 2020, our engagement was therefore focused on that objective. This took place at various levels involving different arms of the government. I myself had many meetings with my Chinese counterpart, as indeed did my senior colleague, Raksha Mantriji. Our NSAs had also engaged his Chinese counterpart because both of them are special representatives on the boundary question. More detailed discussions were conducted by the Working Mechanism for Cooperation and Coordination, WMCC, at the diplomatic level. It also had a military counterpart. It was called the Senior Highest Military Commanders Meeting Mechanism, SHMC. The interactions were naturally very tightly coordinated with the combined presence of both the diplomatic and military officials in all the negotiations. Since June 2020, 17 meetings of the WMCC and 21 rounds of the SHMC have taken place. So, in that background, sir, I would like to inform the House today about the agreement reached on 21st October 2024 regarding Depsang and Demchok. The twin considerations of an unstable local situation and an impacted bilateral relationship were clearly the drivers of the most recent endeavors. These two areas have been the focus of our discussions in WMCC and SHMC with the Chinese side since September 2022, when the last disengagement agreement was concluded at Hot Springs. In the lead up to the October 21 agreement, I had discussed both the specific disengagement issue as well as the larger relationship with my counterpart, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, at Astana on 4 July and at Vientiane on 25 July. Our National Security Advisor and his Chinese counterpart also met in St. Petersburg on 12 September. The problem in these two areas pertained primarily to obstructions of our long-standing patrolling activity. In Demchok, there was also the question of access by our nomadic population to traditional grazing grounds as well as to sites of significance to local people. As a result of this recent understanding, arrived at after intensive negotiations, resumption of patrolling through the traditional areas is underway. It was initially tested by sending out patrols for verification of disengagement on the ground and is now being followed up by regular activities as per the agreed understanding. Following the October 21 understanding, Prime Minister and President Xi Jinping had a meeting on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Kazan on October 23. They welcomed the understanding and directed the foreign ministers to meet and stabilize and rebuild bilateral relations. The special representatives were also to oversee the management of peace and tranquility in the border areas, besides exploring a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable solution to the boundary question. In pursuance of that, I held discussions with Foreign Minister Wang Yi again on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro on November 18, 2024. Sir, Raksha Mantri ji also met Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun at the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting ADMM Plus in Vientiane on November 20. The two ministers discussed progress on the recent agreement on disengagement, the need to address de-escalation along the LAC, and the requirement to strengthen CBMs. They agreed on the importance of continued meetings and consultations at various levels. The House will remember that the October 21, 2004 agreement is the latest in a series of understandings regarding the resolution of the situation at various friction points in eastern Ladakh. In the aftermath of the events of May-June 2020 and the initial disengagement in Galwan Valley in July 2020, there was a foreign ministers meeting in Moscow in September 2020. At that time, our government's position was underlined that the immediate task was to ensure the comprehensive disengagement of troops in all the friction areas. It was also emphasized that the large concentration of troops along the LAC was not in accordance with the 1993 and 1996 agreements, and that the Indian side would not countenance any attempts to change the status quo unilaterally. We also expected that all agreements and protocols pertaining to the management of border areas would be scrupulously followed. Sir, the disengagement has now been achieved in full in eastern Ladakh through a step-by-step process, culminating in Depsang and Demchok. With the task of disengagement completed, it is now our expectation that discussions would commence in regard to the remaining issues that we had placed on the agenda. For the benefit of honorable members, I wish to flag for your attention the previous positions articulated in Parliament previously by the government on this issue. On 15 September 2020, Raksha Mantri ji had made a detailed statement on Chinese attempts to transgress the LAC and the appropriate response given by our armed forces. On 11 February 2021, Raksha Mantri ji again briefed the House about the agreement on disengagement in the north and south banks of Pangong Lake. Thereafter, in August 2021, a third phase of disengagement took place in the area of Gogra, whereby troops would henceforth be in their respective bases. The next step took place in September 2022, which pertained to the Hot Springs area. Again, forward deployments ceased in a phased, coordinated and verified manner, resulting in the return of troops to their respective areas. The most recent October 21, 2024 agreement comes in the wake of earlier disengagements. It completes the first phase that was agreed to in Moscow in September 2020. As members are aware, there is a long history of frictions, transgressions, and face-offs in several sectors of the India-China border. This goes back to Barahuti from 1954, to Longju in 1959, to Sumdurongchu from 1986 to 95, and Depsang in 2013, amongst others. In the past, earlier governments have agreed to a range of steps to diffuse situations that have arisen at different times, including offers from our side to create demilitarized zones, limited non-patrolling zones, relocation or withdrawal of posts, disengagement of troops, and dismantlement of structures. Different locations have seen different solutions being examined. Where the October 21 understanding is concerned, our objective has been to ensure patrolling as in the past to the relevant patrolling points, as well as the resumption of grazing by our civilians as per long-standing practice. This is indeed what we have agreed upon in regard to Depsang and Depchok. In a few other places where friction occurred in 2020, steps of a temporary and limited nature were worked out based on local conditions to obviate the possibility of further friction. This, I must stress, applies to both sides and can be revisited as the situation demands. In that sense, our stance has been resolute and firm and serves our national security fully. The ensuring of our national security in this manner is the result of cumulative and coordinated endeavors of many parts of the government, obviously centered around defense and security forces. Indeed, the competence and professionalism of our services in this period was displayed in our speedy and effective counter-deployment. In the negotiations with China, the defense and diplomatic arms worked in lockstep to ensure that our national interests were comprehensively served. In that context, the House would also recognize that there has been a significant improvement in the border infrastructure, which has made such effective counter-deployment possible. This is reflected, amongst others, in the increase of border infrastructure allocations in the last decade. The Border Roads Organization alone has incurred 3 times the expenditure level of what it was a decade ago. Whether it is the length of the road network or of bridges or the number of tunnels, there has been a substantial increase over the earlier period. Notable milestones in this regard include the Atal Tunnel to Lahul Spiti, the Sela and Nechifu Tunnel to Tawang, the Umlingla Pass Road in southern Ladakh, and the extended opening of the Zojila axis. Work is progressing on some strategically important roads and airfields in Ladakh. The adoption of new technologies in high altitude, remote, inaccessible, and permafrost areas has also been significant. All of this, sir, reflects the government's firm commitment to protecting our borders and ensuring that the armed forces get the facilities and the logistical support that they deserve. Finally, let me share, sir, with honorable members our expectation regarding the direction of ties with China in the near future. Our relationship has progressed in many domains, but was obviously negatively affected by recent events. We are clear that the maintenance of peace and tranquility in border areas is a prerequisite for the development of our ties. In the coming days, we will be discussing both de-escalation as well as effective management of our activities in the border areas. The conclusion of the disengagement phase now allows us to consider other aspects of our bilateral engagement in a calibrated manner, keeping our national security interest first and foremost. In my recent meeting with Foreign Minister Wang Yi, we reached an understanding that the special representatives and the Foreign Secretary level mechanisms will be convening soon. So, sir, let me conclude by thanking honorable members for their attention, and I'm confident that the government has their full support in addressing the complexities of this important relationship.
Shri Piyush Goyal to move a motion for consideration.
So that was External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar making a statement on the recent developments in India's relations with China. The minister outlined the government's position on relations with China in the wake of an understanding in October to resolve the military standoff in the Ladakh sector of the LAC. Peace and tranquility on the border is a prerequisite for developing bilateral ties, the minister informed, adding that the two sides will discuss de-escalation and effective management of activities on the LAC. Finally, he said that the conclusion of disengagement allows the two sides to consider other aspects of bilateral engagement. Moving on now. onto South Korea, with all-out hostilities in Ukraine, Iran, Israel, an uncertain situation in Bangladesh. A latest addition to this list is South Korea. To understand more on what's happening in South Korea, let's take a look at this report.
After the National Assembly's demand to lift martial law troops have been withdrawn. I will accept the National Assembly's demand and lift martial law through a cabinet meeting. However, I ask the National Assembly to immediately stop the reckless activities of paralyzing the function of the country through repeated impeachment attempts, manipulation of legislation and budget.
South Korean president declared martial law on Tuesday night, citing threats from nuclear-armed North Korea. But that decision was reversed in a few hours. This move by President Yoon has triggered a political crisis in Asia's fourth largest economy, and now he is on the verge of facing impeachment. The surprise declaration late on Tuesday ignited a standoff with Parliament, which rejected his attempt to ban political activity and censor the media. As armed troops forced their way into the National Assembly building in Seoul, lawmakers defied the security cordon, and within hours of the declaration, South Korea's parliament, with 190 of its 300 members present, unanimously passed a motion requiring martial law be lifted, including all 18 members present from Yoon's party. The president then rescinded the declaration. South Korean opposition party said Wednesday they had submitted a motion to impeach President Yoon over his short-lived declaration of martial law. The leader of Yoon's ruling People Power Party called for Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun to be fired and the entire cabinet to resign. The main opposition, Democratic Party, called for Yoon, who has been in office since 2022, to resign or face impeachment.
Even if martial law is lifted, he cannot avoid treason charges. It was clearly revealed to the entire nation that President Yoon could no longer run the country normally. He should step down, resign immediately. This is the mandate of the people of the country.
Yoon can be impeached or not depends on the National Assembly. If more than two-thirds of lawmakers vote for it, a trial is then held by the Constitutional Court, which can confirm it with a vote by 6 of the 9 justices. Yoon's party controls 108 seats in the 300-member legislature. If Yoon resigned or was removed from office, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo would fill in as leader until a new election was held within 60 days. Yoon squeezed out a victory in the tightest presidential election in South Korean history in 2022, riding a wave of discontent over economic policy, scandals, and gender wars. If he will be impeached or not still remains to be seen. Aarti Rana's report for DD India.
South Korean President Yoon faced immediate international diplomatic fallout. The country's main ally, the United States, indefinitely postponed meetings of the Nuclear Consultative Group, or NCG, and related tabletop military exercises. The NCG is a signature Yoon effort aimed at having South Korea play a greater role in allied planning for potential nuclear war on the peninsula. The martial law declaration caused doubts over a possible visit next week by U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel said that the White House was watching developments in South Korea with grave concern.
We will continue to follow developments on the ground very closely. We want this to be resolved peacefully in accordance with the rule of law, and certainly the legislature voting to pass something would be consistent with the law of that country, certainly.
Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson, who was due to hold a summit with Yoon this week, skipped the scheduled visit. Swedish Prime Minister's spokesperson in a statement informed about the development. Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba Shigeru told reporters on Wednesday that he is closely monitoring the situation in South Korea. And on to updates from Syria now. The West Asian country is facing a surge in conflict as rebels pressed closer to the key city of Hama following their stunning capture of Aleppo last week. Rebel advances, including seizing Mar Shahur, signal a major blow to President Bashar al-Assad's forces. The Syrian army scrambles reinforcements while battling a new offensive from the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces in the northeast. Iran has meanwhile said that it would consider deploying troops to Syria if requested by Damascus, while Russia called for an end to terrorist aggression. With the battlefield crowded by global powers, Iran, Russia and Turkey plan diplomatic talks in Doha, highlighting the chaotic intersection of military action and international politics. Further, Russia and the United States clashed at the United Nations on Tuesday, accusing each other of supporting terrorism during a Security Council meeting convened over a sudden escalation in fighting in Syria. Deputy US Ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood, called for a de-escalation of the fighting in Syria and the protection of civilians. He also expressed concern that the rebel offensive was led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Wood said that the United States has for decades fought the scourge of terrorism and will continue to fight that scourge.
The fact that HTS is listed as a terrorist organization by the US and UN does not justify the further atrocities by the Assad regime and its Russian backers. Since November 27, these have included attacks by the regime and its Russian backers on schools and hospitals in both Idlib and Aleppo, causing civilian casualties.
On to Europe, NATO members are in Brussels for the second day for the two-day meeting on Wednesday. Secretary General Mark Rutte on Wednesday said that the NATO members agreed at a meeting with Ukraine's foreign minister on Tuesday and providing air defense systems to protect Ukraine's infrastructure against Russian attacks would be a priority. He further stated that he was confident that allies will assure whatever they can supply to Ukraine will be supplied. And on to West Asia now. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed Israel's commitment to the ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah, but also warned that the war is far from over. At a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Netanyahu stated that Hezbollah had severely violated the truce on Monday, prompting Israel to retaliate by attacking over 20 targets across Lebanon.
We are currently in a ceasefire. I note a ceasefire, not the end of war. We have a clear goal to return to residence, to rehabilitate the north. We are enforcing the ceasefire with an iron fist, acting against any violation, minor or serious.
Thousands of Georgians protest for the sixth consecutive night in front of the parliament in capital Tbilisi against the government decision to not hold EU membership talks until 2028. The country of 3.7 million people has been gripped by crisis since last Thursday. Protesters shot fireworks at shielded police cordons at the parliament building, who retaliated by spraying them with water out of a noose. As a response, Georgian police used water cannons, tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. And Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah has been declared Namibia's first female president, cementing her place in history and continuing her party SWAPO's 34-year rule. The 72-year-old vice president secured a decisive victory with 57% of the votes, surpassing the 50% threshold needed to win. Her main rival, Panduleni Itula of the IPC, garnered 26% of votes. Nandi Ndaitwah, a veteran of Namibia's independence struggle, vowed to uphold peace and stability. However, the election faced controversy as the IPC alleged irregularities, citing technical glitches and ballot shortages. They plan to challenge the results in court. Meanwhile, SWAPO maintained its grip on the National Assembly with a majority of 51 seats. You're with us on DD India News are still to come on the show. India celebrates Navy Day. President Draupadi Murmu to attend the celebrations in Puri, Odisha. India's Akali Dal leader Sukhbir Singh Badal survives an assassination attempt at the Golden Temple in Amritsar.
Goa, a food paradise, both steeped in historical culinary tradition and at the forefront of a modern-day food revolution that is fresher, more local, and more global than ever before. I'm embarking on a journey across the state to explore the very best of food here.
This is honestly my favorite way to eat an egg.
Break bread with some of Goa's most loved chefs and understand what food really means to communities here. Watch postcards from Goa on National Geographic.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Goa, an adventure paradise like none other. From lush forests to rugged hills, from pristine ocean beach stretches to stunning lakes, there is something to explore in every corner of the state. And some adventures are wilder than others.
You're watching DD India News. I'm Tanvi Taneja. A quick reminder of the headlines we are tracking at this hour. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol faces impeachment calls after martial law debacle. French Prime Minister Michel Barnier backs Emmanuel Macron's leadership ahead of the no-confidence vote today. And ISRO to launch Europe's Proba 3 satellite from Sriharikota today for solar research. And going back to our top story of martial law debacle in South Korea, news just in, 6 South Korean opposition parties submitted a bill in parliament to impeach Yoon with voting set for Friday or Saturday. And to discuss this with us, we have with us former Indian ambassador to Korea, C. Rajasekhar. He joins us in the studio. Welcome, sir, to the program. So up first, do we have any clear idea of why South Korean president suddenly imposed martial rule? Because President Yoon in his address yesterday cited an alleged threat from nuclear-armed North Korea, but he did not give specific threats details.
Yeah, namaskar. To begin with, I was not ambassador to Korea, but I had interesting, unique combination of experience of being Director East Asia in the Ministry of External Affairs headquarters, dealing with both Koreas, and also serving as minister in Seoul, the capital of Republic of Korea. So coming to your question now, he has cited 2 reasons, saying that the social confusion that opposition is promoting, and they have been blocking his various political initiatives, including passing of the budget and being North Korean sympathizers. So this is what he has alleged. But to put things in perspective, this year in April there were elections to the Korean National Assembly, and the other party, which is the Democratic Coalition, Democratic Alliance, has retained majority by securing 173 seats out of 300 seats. So here you have the parliament, so to say the Korean National Assembly, which is controlled by the Korean Democratic Alliance, which does not belong to. The president is from the conservative Grand National Party. So this is the basic reason. So the opposition being opposition, because here in the Korean constitution, the Republic of Korea constitution, president combines both the executive and also the head of the state, although there is a prime minister and cabinet, they all function at the behest of the president of the country. So there has been political divisions between the two, and they have come to the fore, and the president wanted to get rid of all the opposition by imposing martial law and suspending democratic political rights. So fortunately it has ended with victory to democracy and victory to the people of Korea, and as a result all of us stand better off.
Now, several South Korean opposition parties have submitted this bill calling for President Yoon's impeachment. Is this move likely to succeed? And if it does, will the president be forced to step down?
Yeah, as the numbers stand, out of the National Assembly 300, only 108 belong to the President Yoon Suk Yeol's Conservative National Party. The interesting thing is, even the president of his own party, the Conservative Party, President Han Dong-hoon, he has criticized the move of the president to impose martial law. And as the National Assembly convened early this morning to resolve that martial law shall be lifted, interestingly, more than the opposition members are only 173, but 17 more, a total of 190 attended and voted to lift the martial law. And also sensing the mood, the political leaders are very quick to understand, sense in way ahead of the media and the rest of us. So I see that the mood is very strong to see the back of President Yoon Suk Yeol for his political mistake, because since 1980 the national mood clearly of the country has been to be democratic, to set in place democratic traditions. It was unfortunate that this martial law was conceived. So I would see that even before the assembly would formally move, the gentleman himself may consider stepping down.
Okay, Yoon won a very tightly contested presidential election just 2 years ago, yet today his support has fallen drastically. The ratings say they are at extremely poor 20%. Why this fall from grace, so to speak?
Say political fluctuations, they do happen, up and down. Here what happened is, one is that the presidential elections themselves were very closely contested, and the fact that assembly is dominated by the opposition Democratic Alliance, the president would have been much better off to be more consensual, more collective in decision making, rather than seeking to impose his personal will. So finally democracy is the rule of majority or more people collective decision. I think that's where his doom had begun.
And even senior aides of the South Korean president have offered to resign. What does this suggest about South Korean president's backing even among his own supporters?
That's what, I said, his own party leader and also his own legislators and his own staff, but everybody sees clearly. Say the move of imposing martial law was ill-conceived, and president himself saw that, the mistake of it in lifting the martial law by about 4:30 a.m. early morning. The moment the assembly has convened and by 190, all of them present unanimously resolved to lift martial law. That means it's very clear. So here the president has to go.
And one of South Korea's largest labor unions, the KCTU, has called on more than of its 1 million members to strike until the president resigns. So could this be the last nail in the coffin for the president?
Very well. Say what we have to commend is that everybody, all institutions have really held calm and discharged their duties. The police and the military, although they have moved in, they have not caused any violence, they have not provoked any violence, and people have peacefully protested. It's a victory for the people and the spirit of democracy.
Spirit of democracy. Thank you very much, Ambassador Jaishankar, for shedding insights on this debacle, martial law and democracy being restored as of now in South Korea.
Good for us also as friends.
Of course, and good for the US. Yes. Okay, moving on now. Winter session of Indian Parliament entered its 8th day on Wednesday. Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav moved the Railways Amendment Bill 2024 in the lower house, also known as the Lok Sabha. The bill aims to further amend the Railways Act 1989. Earlier during the question hour, the minister replied to questions asked by members regarding the new train services and station development.
In the case of railway, since the train operation is directly integrated with the station development, so when we selected the Amrit Bharat station scheme stations, we tried to make sure that the disruption of the traffic operations, disruption of the train operations will be minimal. That was the primary criteria for selecting the stations. And as I said earlier, this is the largest station redevelopment program anywhere in the world happening at this point of time. 1,300 stations actually getting constructed at this point of time. As and when this project is further progressed, we'll reconsider.
The Indian Space Research Organization's trusted polar satellite launch vehicle will blast off from Sriharikota spaceport in Andhra Pradesh today, carrying European Space Agency's Proba 3 mission. The polar satellite launch vehicle PSLV will carry the Proba 3 mission into high Earth orbit. This mission is a collaborative effort between the European Space Agency and ISRO's commercial arm, New Space India Limited. Scheduled for liftoff at 4:08 p.m. Indian Standard Time from the first launch pad, the mission will provide critical data to ESA scientists studying the sun and its influence on space weather phenomena. This partnership between ISRO and ESA underscores the growing importance of international collaboration in advancing space exploration and technology. Proba 3 is a significant step forward in solar research with the potential to unveil new insights about the sun's behavior and its effects on the Earth's environment. India is celebrating the Navy Day today to honour the achievements and role of the Indian Navy. President Draupadi Murmu, is the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, will attend the Navy Day celebrations as chief guest at the Blue Flag Beach in Puri, Odisha. The event will showcase the Navy's operational demonstration, highlighting its capabilities and dedication to protecting India's maritime interests. The theme for the Navy Day this year is Combat Ready, Credible, Cohesive, Future Ready Force.
And on the high seas, we move as one. Beyond the horizon.
So as India celebrates its Navy Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi greeted the valiant personnel of the Indian Navy on the occasion. Prime Minister Modi hailed them for their commitment, which ensures the safety, security and prosperity of our nation. In a social media post, the Prime Minister said that Indians take great pride in the Navy's rich maritime history.
आज 4 दिसंबर का ये ऐतिहासिक दिन हमें आशीर्वाद देता है.
Commodore Suvarat Magan, Indian naval officer in charge in the South Indian state of Tamil Nadu, flagged off a 13-day, 2,500-kilometer long motorcycle rally from Chennai organized in view of India's Navy Day. The Indian Navy's Sea Riders Odyssey 2024 bike rally commenced on Wednesday as part of the Navy Day 2024 celebrations. The 13-day rally will cover a distance of approximately 2,500 kilometers through various locations in South India's Tamil Nadu. The cities include Puducherry, Kumbakonam, Tanjavur, Trichy, Karaikude, Dhanushkodi, Rameshwaram, Valiyur, Madurai, Kodaikanal, Sainik School in Amravati Pudur, Coimbatore, Wellington, Salem and Vellore. And next we take a look at other stories making news in India. Former Punjab Deputy Chief Minister Sukhbir Singh Badal narrowly escaped a shooting while serving penance at the Golden Temple in Amritsar. The attacker was overpowered and arrested, with the motive still unknown. Chief Minister of India's Union Territory of Puducherry N. Rangaswamy inspected the water level of the Shankaraparani River following incessant rainfall and landfall due to cyclone Fengal. He also interacted and cautioned the residents near the banks to move to a safer location.
Gentlemen, I urge.
And the joint military exercise Harimau Shakti 2024 between Indian Army and the Malaysian Army is underway in Kuala Lumpur. The Indian Army contingent showcased a ceremonial parade underscoring their readiness for joint training and operational collaboration. Officials from both countries exchanged mementos as a gesture of goodwill, paving a significant step towards deepening military ties. Still to come on DD India News Hour. In hockey, India set up their final showdown against Pakistan in Men's Junior Asia Cup. And in La Liga, Barcelona secure 5-1 victory over Mallorca. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Tanvi Taneja. The French government is to face a no-confidence motion on Wednesday that may end the administration of Prime Minister Michel Barnier, who has been in power for just 3 months. This will be the first French government to be forced out by a no-confidence vote in more than 60 years. Barnier on Tuesday said that he remained open to budget talks with Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally and other parties. He rejected the idea that President Emmanuel Macron should resign to unblock the country's political crisis, calling him the guarantor of stability. Macron is set to return to France from a state visit to Saudi Arabia during the day. So France's political woes have been in spotlight this year after snap elections in June. Now, amid the political turmoil, Europe's biggest economies, Germany and France, are in turmoil. For more on this, we are joined by DW correspondent Varda Imran in Berlin. Varda, what can we expect from France today?
Thanks for having me. Today could be the day that triggers the ouster of the current prime minister in France, who has only been in office for 3 short months, as the opposition and the far right, led by Marine Le Pen, will vote on the future of this government. The likely outcome is that Barnier loses his job as Prime Minister of France, and it would then fall on President Emmanuel Macron to pick his replacement should this happen. However, the president and prime minister are both pleading to lawmakers to let the government stay so they can work to pass the budget. In the case of France, the far right is teaming up with the left to oust this government. This is a very unlikely alliance, which I presume could only result from deep resentment and dislike of how things are going in France. If we assume that Barnier's government is out of the door today, could snap elections be called again soon? Well, not soon enough, because French law requires 1 year to pass between snap elections. So this would only be possible in June 2025.
France and Germany's political problems have been a setback for Europe. Varda, what are the core issues here?
Well, passing budgets this year in Europe has proven to be an ordeal, with Germany already collapsing on fiscal and budgetary disagreements. For France, the issue is how to reduce the budget deficit, which is currently sitting well above the European Commission's limit. And because France spent a lot keeping the economy afloat in the last few years, it has also spent a lot and resulted in this budget deficit. The budget being presented by the current government includes cuts worth 40 billion euros and a plan to raise 20 billion euros from tax hikes. The European Commission likes the plan, but the people of France do not. Ideally, the budget would pass before the year ends, and this is looking very unlikely, especially if the government topples over today. Similar issues have plagued Germany, where government spending was way out of line, and now the budget for next year is missing billions of euros, and no one can agree on how spending should be. Add politics and power grabbing to this mix, and it's a disaster for the economic heart of Europe.
And quickly, Vardha, how has all this been impacting the markets in Europe?
Well, French bond futures are quite weak, and so are European futures as a whole. The euro still remains dipped close to a 2-year low that it touched last week. France is the Eurozone's second biggest economy, and so unrest in Paris results in a domino effect here in Europe. Investors have punished French assets during this political crisis. Since June, when Macron called quick elections, the French CAC 40 index has dropped in nearly 10%, and this is the heaviest loser in the top EU economies. But markets overall globally are also quite jolted after the events in South Korea, which may be seeing the biggest political crisis in decades.
Thank you, Vardha, for all those updates. Vardha Imran joining us from DW Berlin. And time now for all the sporting action. First, updates from tennis. Novak Djokovic will begin his preparations for next month's Australian Open by playing at the Brisbane International Warm-Up Tournament. The Serb will compete alongside defending Brisbane champion Grigor Dimitrov at the ATP 250 event, which starts on December 29th. Dane Holger Rune and American Francis Tiafoe are among those also taking part. The 37-year-old is targeting a record 25th Grand Slam crown after failing to add to the total during a frustrating year 2024. The ATP WTA event runs December 29th to January 5th, with the Australian Open to begin on January 12th. The Indian junior men's hockey team defeated Malaysia 3-1 in the semi-final of the Men's Junior Asia Cup to set up their title clash against Pakistan. Unbeaten so far in the tournament, India scored through Dilraj Singh in the 10th minute, Rohit in 45th and final goal from Sharda Nantiwari in the 52nd minute to secure their place in the final. Malaysia's lone goal from a penalty stroke converted by Azamuddin Kamaruddin in the 57th minute. Now, India will take on arch-rivals Pakistan in the blockbuster final on Wednesday. Pakistan defeated Japan 4-2 in the first semi-final. India had earned a hard-fought 2-1 victory against the long-time rivals to clinch the gold medal last time round. And some updates from the world of football now. In La Liga, double goals from captain Rafinha helped Barcelona secure the 5-1 victory, the first time in a month, against Mallorca on Tuesday. Barca took an early lead from the Ferran Torres, scoring following a mistake by the host defence, but striker Moruki levelled the scoring from a quick counter-attack just before the break. Yet Barca came out flying in the second half and Rafinha restored its lead from the penalty spot in the 56th minute. Yamal crossed to Rafinha to extend Barca's lead with a tap in the 74th minute and substitutes Frenkie de Jong and Pau Victor to add to the goal feast. Barca tops the La Liga standings on 37 points, 4 ahead of the second place Real Madrid, which is 2 games in hand. And updates from the ongoing 10th Asia Pacific Deaf Games 2024, which is currently being held in Malaysia. Ramesh Kumar won a silver medal for India in the men's javelin throw event. He defeated Chinese Taipei's Yu Hao Xiu with a throw of 55.85 meters. China's Xin Shun secured the gold medal with a score of 59.66 meters. India secured its first gold medal with a stellar victory in the 4x400 meters mixed relay. The Indian deaf team, comprising Vineet Mani, Ridwan Ridham and Priyanga, defeated the team from Kazakhstan, while China came on third spot. In table tennis, the Indian deaf women's team defeated Korea 3-0 in the semi-final on Wednesday. The Indian team will now face China in the finals. Christmas is round the corner. Keeping the festive fervour alive, a family in Germany has made their home an abode of lights and jubilant Christmas decor. The Jeroman family set the world record for the largest number of decorated Christmas trees in one place, with 605 trees and with 120,000 ornaments, 50,000 lights and thousands of Christmas figurines. The place is bursting with sparkle and colour. All right. India's public service broadcaster Prasar Bharati has recently launched Waves, entering the field of OTT platform. Waves provides a complete infotainment ecosystem to digital media and OTT audiences. If you want great content for free, then download Waves today. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates on our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.